Ray's neighborhood was quiet enough to hear the porch light buzz. At 2:13 a.m., he stepped outside for air. Across the street, a black figure stood where no one lived, tall and faceless, red eyes faint in the dark. He told himself it was a trick of streetlight and trees. He blinked, then checked his phone camera. The screen showed nothing, only his own shaky shadow. Still, when he turned back, the figure had moved closer by a few houses, as if the night carried it on silent legs. Ray forced a laugh, but his breath sounded too loud in the empty air. Ray locked the door, climbed into bed, and stared at the ceiling until dawn. When the light finally failed, he sat up anyway. In the hallway mirror, red eyes opened inside the glass, just behind him. He turned, but the room was empty. The eyes stayed, watching from the dark. Morning didn't fix it. Ray's dark circles looked worse under the kitchen bulb. He stepped onto the porch and saw the shadow across the street again, taller than the mailbox, unmoving, red eyes steady. He asked his mom if she noticed. She stirred coffee, staring through the window like it was just weather. He walked to the sidewalk, forcing his legs not to shake. Behind the leaning tree, the figure stood half hidden, as if it had been waiting there all night. Ray turned his head toward the road. When he looked back, the shadow was closer, at the end of the yard fence. He hadn't even moved. At noon, he tried to escape it with noise. He jogged toward the empty fields behind the neighborhood. His lungs burned. He glanced over his shoulder, expecting nothing. The red eyes were right there, level with his own, inches from his face. Then his watch buzzed. 3 hours had vanished, and he was still running. Ray couldn't sleep, so he hunted for proof. In the bathroom, he held up a handheld mirror and angled it toward the dark hallway. Red eyes glowed in the reflection. Impossible, because the hallway behind him was empty. He spun around fast. Only toothpaste smell, tile, and silence. The mirror stayed bright with those eyes. His TV looked dead, but when static filled the screen, the silhouette drifted through it. Windows showed the same tall shape, centered like a camera had trained on it. Even the neighbor's security feed caught it, just behind Ray's shoulder. Every time he glanced away, the figure's position shifted forward, like it was measuring the gap. That night, he pulled up every clip he had saved. The last frame wasn't outside. It was inside his room. The shadow stood at the foot of his bed, perfectly still, red eyes aimed at the lens. Ray sat up in real time, but the camera showed it arriving a minute earlier, already waiting for him to look. Ray couldn't carry the fear alone. He cornered his mom in the garage, pointing at the corner where the shadow had been. "It's there," he said, trying to sound normal. She frowned, then laughed softly, like a kid had imagined a stain. Ray watched her eyes scan empty space, passing right through the darkness. That evening, Jay almost saw it. Ray whispered for him to look at the kitchen doorway. For one breath, the air felt colder. Jay's pupils widened. There, between the cabinets, red eyes hovered in black. He reached out. The moment his fingers moved, the shadow wasn't there anymore, as if it had never existed. Ray retreated to his room and stared at his reflection to steady himself. In the sink, his water glass sat untouched, but the surface began to glow from underneath. Faint red eyes floated up, inches from his face. Then a pale, smoky hand pressed against the inside of the glass. Ray's own reflection smiled without him. Ray decided not to sleep. He left the hallway light on and listened to every creak. At 1:02 a.m., footsteps formed inside the house, slow, deliberate, too close to be plumbing. Then the front door clicked, unlatching itself without a key. Heavy breathing followed, right behind the couch. When dawn came, the fear looked physical. His cap sat on the rug, sweat dark and damp. The shadow stood beside it, tall as his doorway, red eyes fixed on him like a judge. Ray blinked once. Between blinks, it was one room closer. The air smelled faintly of cold smoke and dust. He tried the bathroom mirror again, backing away with his heart hammering. The room was bright, too bright,
Then red eyes opened in the glass behind him, level with his shoulders. Ray spun around. The mirror showed the hallway. The hallway showed nothing. A lock clicked from the bathroom side, and the light behind him dimmed.
Ray started writing everything down, like a science experiment. 11:07, 8 cereal. 11:12, stood by the window. But his notebook pages kept changing. Ink appeared where his pen hadn't been, and his phone clock jumped ahead with no warning. He stared, wondering if time was slipping. At night, nightmares arrived early and refused to end. In the hallway, the shadow copied his posture, hand on his chest, shoulder slumped, almost tender. Ray tried to stand still. The dark thing moved half a second ahead, as if it borrowed his future. He filmed it. The video stuttered, then cut to a frame where he was already turning his head. Ray woke in bed, then checked the window. Still night, still raining. He swung his legs down. In the mirror, he watched himself stay under the covers. At the same time, the hallway darkness lifted its long arm, matching the motion he hadn't made yet. The mirror's red eyes blinked, and Ray heard another breath, inside the glass, closer than his own.
Ray searched until dawn, scrolling old forums and town archives on a borrowed laptop. He found grainy posts, missing boys, blank faces, the same tall black silhouette with faint red eyes that stayed visible in total darkness. Everyone described the final sighting as normal until it wasn't. They vanished quickly afterward. Ray saved screenshots, hands shaking. He tried to outrun the pattern. Ray drove until streetlights thinned and gas stations stopped. Every road felt familiar anyway. When he checked the map, his route looped, turn by turn, back towards his own neighborhood. Like the city was a circle the shadow had drawn. He pulled over and forced himself to breathe. At the curb, the engine cooled, and he finally dared to look. The passenger seat was occupied. The tall darkness sat there, unmoving, red eyes bright through the dim window. Ray's mouth opened, but no sound came. Then his phone screen lit with a live camera feed, showing the shadow already waiting at the exact spot he'd parked. Ray stopped at the backyard, where the darkness seemed thicker. No porch lights, no neighbors. Only crickets and the faint hiss of wind through dead leaves. He stepped into the center and faced the shape at last. The silhouette looked taller than ever, long arms hanging, smoke wisps curling from its body. Red eyes locked on him, calm as judgment. Ray tried to film it. The lens fogged with black mist, and the screen went grainy, then dark. He heard a thought that wasn't his, echoing like his own voice through a hallway speaker. Images flashed in his mind, reflections, security feeds, nightmares. Each time he looked away, the entity copied his world and replaced the person inside it. In the black glass, Ray saw something move behind the camera. A new teenage boy leaned into frame. Same cap, same jersey, messy hair catching the faint red glow. Ray's throat tightened. His own reflection didn't appear anymore. The shadow didn't vanish. It waited, eyes unblinking, as if Ray had only been the last doorway.